Diann, I want to take to you a point that I believe I understood Ken to make, which was that that your side, the abolitionist side, moves arguments when the data fails your first arguments. And the example he gave was on the race question, where he said, if I have this right, Ken, that at one time the argument was that most of the convicts facing on death row were disproportionately African American, but that the argument, failing data confirmation, that you've moved the argument to most of the victims are white, and that's a little bit of a dance. So I'd like you to respond both to his point that you're moving the goalpost, and just to go to the point itself.
I wish I had the power to move goalposts the way Kent was talking about it. We don't do that. The facts are the same. What I see is sort of Kent looking selectively at the evidence. The case has always been that the death penalty actually tracks our history of racial apartheid when it comes to criminal justice, that the death penalty, when we had slave codes, actually was meted out based on the race of the victim and the race of the defendant. And even though the slave codes, and we've made some progress, the process, the system still works the same way. The core issue is that the death penalty values some lives more than others. And when it comes to the good that our opponents are saying the death penalty offers, that good is only used when the victim is white, because that's where the system currently sees the value line.
And the data is there.
And the data is there.
And a recent... Let me finish and then bring it to Ken.
Sure.
Well, no, first of all,
you're going to let me finish.
No, you finish, Diann, and then I want Ken to respond.
There was a recent study that just came out that looked at death sentences from 1976 to 2013, and what that study found was two things. First, that the race of victim discrimination continued, that the least likely, as I said earlier, the least likely victim for whom the death penalty will be sought will be an African-American man, even though African-American men are the most likely to be victims of homicide. And they also found that a defendant who was convicted and sentenced to death for murdering a white victim who was African-American is far more likely. One other point. Prosecutors, every study, there's been over 200 studies over 40 years, every study has found that prosecutors seek the death penalty for crimes against white victims more frequently than other victims.
I want to bring this to Kent.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm very glad to hear that we are agreed that seeking the death penalty constitutes honoring the life of the victim. I appreciate that you're conceding that point. On the studies, the pattern of offending across racial groups is not uniform. That's a demographic reality. If you take these studies and if they are litigated, if they are reanalyzed, if you have competing experts looking at the same data, what you find over and over again is that when additional factors, legitimate factors, explaining the differences between cases are taken fully into account, that these racial differences vanish down into the statistical grasp where we can say that it's hardly even apparent that there's any effect there.
Well, in the interest of intellectual honesty on all sides, are you all saying that the data we're talking about can be cooked by either side to produce the results at once?
Absolutely not.
You're not saying that?
I'm saying because it's 40 years of 40. We have studied the death penalty in every state that has it. 40 years, different researchers, different approaches, and the data, the outcome is remarkably consistent finding racial bias.
You'll have to. It's the boldest study in the McCleskey case that went off on the issue of race of the victim. That is the effect that has been replicated countless times, no matter who looks at the data and how often. And that's what you'll find the weight of criminologists and scientists saying. The race of the victim makes a difference, period.
So let me just bring this back to Ken for one more round on this point of your opponents are basically saying that the data is really consistent. You're basically saying that it's not. Do we just declare impasse on this, or is there?
This is very soft science. These are mathematical models, and there's a lot of leeway when you put together a mathematical model, and you can choose the variables the way you want. You can get the result you want. What we see time and again is the same authors who have an axe to grind put out study after study. And I do want to mention the Baldus study from Georgia. That study went to trial in federal district court, and the finding of the federal district court was that Baldus's study did not, in fact, prove what he said it proved.
Robert Blecker.
Yeah, I want to dig down and talk about the meaning of this race of victim effect if it's real, and I believe it is real. Lorton Prison was the only all-black prison system in the United States where I spent 12 years, and I explored this issue in depth. Diann Rust-Tierney says that it shows that if it's more likely that we will execute the killer of a white than the killer of a black, that means that we devalue black life. That's not true. There are alternative explanations for it. Most killings are same-race killings, whites on whites, blacks on blacks. The budget for death penalty trials, which is very high, tend to be more available. The money is more available in white jurisdictions than black jurisdictions. The odds of picking a jury that'll go death is greater in white jurisdictions, although there is substantial support for the death penalty in black communities. It's less than half. It's in the range of 40 to 45%. So what does it really mean? The victim's family is consulted. Do you want me to go death? If it's been a black victim, often they have a much more nuanced appreciation of what the conditions were that produced that killing. They realize that there but for fortune, my child, who is now dead, could just as easily be accused of the killing because he ran in the wrong crowd, he was part of a drug life, etc., etc. So why compound the tragedy? So they will say, don't go death. That doesn't show that they're devaluing black life. That shows they're continuing to value black life, including the life of the killer.
All right, let me stop you and let Diann respond.
You know, we have to keep bringing this back to reality. We're in the midst of a conversation in this country right today where African Americans and people of color do not have the same experience with law enforcement that other people have. And we're telling people that we have essentially two systems of justice. And in that context, we cannot have a death penalty. And what we're talking about in terms of years of study is the same science that we use to look at implicit bias generally. It's the same science that we use to determine that there's a glass ceiling for women. It's the same science that we've used to determine that women are not receiving equal pay. I mean, this is not some made-up science. This is how we determine whether a system, even a neutral system, operates in a way that has a discriminatory impact.
Robert Blecker. Before you speak, I just want to say, after Robert speaks, I want to go to you for questions. And I'm telling you this now before Robert so you can prepare. The way it will work is if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. We'd appreciate it if you would stand up, wait for a microphone to reach you. They'll be brought to you. Hold it about as far away from your mouth as I am with this microphone so that we can hear you on all the podcasts and the radio broadcasts. Tell us your name and ask a question that's on point and very terse. Thanks. Go ahead, Robert Blecker.
I just want to acknowledge where there is a real race effect in the death penalty. And that's not the way it's administered, it's the way it's defined. That is to say, because felony murder is the most common aggravator and robbery murder has put more people on death row than any other aggravator, and because robbery is an economic crime and correlates with race, that creates the disparity in terms of percentage of population in those who are on death row. If you eliminate the robbery aggravator from felony murder as a death penalty aggravator, you will eliminate the racially disparate effect. And the other place that it occurs is the place that nobody wants to talk about, but that I became aware of. There is deep prejudice in both the black and the white community against those who have prototypically African features. Studies have shown that the hue of the skin, this is true in the black community as well as the white community, will influence the probability of being convicted and condemned. That is a pernicious form of racism that is extraordinarily troubling and almost impossible to eradicate in both communities.
Barry Scheck.
So I've heard you say this before, and it's true, all right? And you say, well, if we eliminate the felony aggravator, then we'll get rid of some of these race effects, which, Bob, you acknowledge exist in the system. And we've got to be in the real world. That's not happening.
Oh, I think you're wrong about that.